authors want to sell more books. But it's hard if you're not visible. We can help. Claim your instant access to the 10 tips for free book promos from the Bold Authors Network at fictionwriterspodcast.com/boldauthors now. Welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where you will discover tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Here you'll find new energy, new perspectives, new resources, and new ideas that will spark your creativity into a blaze of brilliance. It's easier than you think. Be sure you visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, get out your notebook, tune in, and let's get started.
Are you interested in history? How about women's history? If that rings a bell with you, that's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Lana McAra. Welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast. Tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Today, I am delighted to welcome to the broadcast Janis Robinson Daly. Janis graduated with a BA in psychology from Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts, where she grew to love the supportive relationships between the students and a heightened awareness of female-centric issues. And Wheaton at the time was a women's college. She's a sought-after speaker for book clubs, women's groups, libraries, and writers groups, presenting how her genealogy research inspired her to begin writing. Her two novels, The Unlocked Path and The Path Beneath Her Feet, are women's historical fiction about women in medicine in the early 1900s. Love that. They were a #1 new release, historical fiction for Amazon, both of them. Welcome, Janis.
Thank you so much, Lana. Happy to be here chatting with you today about women's history.
So interesting, because I find that sometimes two things about women's history, and I'm a historical writer myself. I write historical novels. And one is the rewriting of history. And, that it never really happened that way. And the second thing is how little we know about.
Our textbooks definitely left out a lot.
Yes. So I'm really excited to dig into this. You started with genealogy. How did that all happen?
Yeah, it just became a pastime, a hobby, if you will, for me that I developed after a very long time of wanting to delve into some family history, particularly my paternal grandmother's family that I didn't know much about. Didn't know that grandmother. She passed before I was born. But intrigued by her story and the little tidbits I knew about the family that came originally from Philadelphia. I live outside of Boston. And started down that path and kept going back, one generation to looking for something interesting until I found it with my great-great-grandfather, who was a judge in Philadelphia in the mid-1800s. And before he was a judge, he was a lawyer and involved in the abolitionist movement in Philadelphia. So as a history nerd, that immediately was pretty interesting, learning how he actually defended runaway slaves in the 1850s who had been captured and under the Fugitive Slave Act could be sent back to their owners in the South. But he defended and won every single case that he handled of those runaways. So that immediately was a very proud moment to know that I had an ancestor who believed in the rights of others, the rights of, the Black people to have their freedom. And as I started to dig a little bit more about him, I found another interesting fact revealing his belief in the rights of others, that he was a founder of the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania. Never heard that there were women-only medical schools, but really interested in that, having gone to a women's college myself, not medical, but just a liberal arts undergraduate school, and started to dive into wanting to learn more about not just the men and women who founded the school, But what about the women who attended the school, who had that commitment, that desire of wanting to study medicine, of wanting to be an accredited, degreed doctor at a time when almost every other medical school in the States denied them admission? And it was then when I learned about some of those real-life women, the students and then the graduates, and their incredible accomplishments afterwards, that I felt these stories need to be told. I had never come across them before, so I guess I'm going to write a book. And so I did. The Unlocked Path talks primarily about the Women's Medical College. My fictional character attends the school, graduates, and then obviously, has an incredible circle of women around her, her classmates, and her family members that are her support, sisterhood that helps all of them get through school. And then the challenges, of course, they find trying to find a job after graduating still, as a woman in medicine at the time.
Yes, I can imagine going into a town and setting up a practice and nobody showing up.
Exactly. Mostly because husbands weren't going to pay for their women, their wives, daughters, to be treated by a woman physician.
Yes, isn't it interesting that women were the caregivers for the sick
Right.
and the family?
Yeah.
But they weren't allowed to be official.
And it was that was the distinction, having a degree in their hands, because women have been healers and midwives throughout history, but the difference was to have an actual recognized profession and that title of doctor attached to her name. That was the difference.
Yes, yes. So you have a program. Tell us a little bit about your program. 31 titles.
31 titles, Women in History. So I launched this program in 2023. At the core, truth be told, it was an opportunity for me to gain a little bit more awareness for my book. But I started to look around and thought, we are very fortunate that in 2023 at the time, other women authors are finding those other stories of women in history who have remained in the shadows, and they were starting to write those books. So you think of the Marie Benedicts and the Stephanie Dreys, wonderful writers and best-selling authors that were bringing stories forward. So there is nothing stronger than the author community. It's an amazing community. And I decided I would put together a list because everyone loves lists, best of. And how about for March, which is Women's History Month, a list of 31 books to read to celebrate women's history. So I came up with the list, the first one in 2023, which of course could include my book that came out in August of 2022. And then curated and really looked hard for books about, those women in history whose stories haven't been told. Looking for a diversity in the subject or geographic, where she lived, the time period where she had her accomplishments and achievements, as well as diversity in the authors, cultural background, and even type of press. I work with a small indie press, and quite honestly, we don't always get as much recognition as those published with the Big Five. So, how do we elevate and bring awareness for some of those other wonderful titles forward to a broader audience? So I've been very fortunate with this program. I've received incredible support from the other authors on the list, promoting the list, resharing through social media and all. So launched in 23, 31 titles, came back last year with a whole nother set of books for March 24, and now March 1st, this year I launched my 2025 list, which has another 31 titles, completely new. So my goal is to see if we can get to 365 titles. Make it a year-long process.
Wow, what a great idea. I've never heard of anyone doing that before. So kudos to you for thinking outside the box and, doing something original. That's amazing. So let's shift gears just a minute and talk a little bit about marketing, because that's what you're doing. You created this list, and I would encourage our listeners to open your ears when we're talking about this stuff, because I don't get a lot of opportunity to talk about marketing here. And that is one of the topics that we love to delve into. So let's talk about your mailing list. I know mailing lists are a struggle for fiction writers. So how did you handle that?
So I have been building my mailing list since before I was published. When I first started writing the book, I started with a blog, and I got people to follow the blog and sign up to get my blog posts. So very organic and just a very slow build. But I added on to that every event I would go to. And you mentioned earlier, I do a lot of work with book clubs. I speak at a lot of libraries. I have my handy dandy sign up for my newsletter sheet at every single event. I have done a couple of giveaway programs in partnership with other companies or other authors, sign up for my newsletter, be entered to win something, as well as I field a lot of surveys. So even in developing the Women's History Month list, to cull down to 31 books, I cast a net out asking other people for recommendations. And so I put together a survey and then collected their email in case they want to know what the final list is. So it's been a very slow build, very organic though, but I know that they're all, readers, members of book clubs, people interested in historical fiction. My current list is now over 3,000 subscribers, which, is, I think, a pretty good size for someone who's been out in this book marketing world of only a couple of years now.
That is great. 3,000. Wow. I know there's so many people out there who would just die to have 3,000 people. But it is a consistency about it, what you're saying here, and staying with it. And one of the things, too, to emphasize is this is a long game. It's not a 2-month process. You throw your book out there and 6 weeks later, you've got 3,000 on your mailing list and everything's going great. No, that's not reality.
Yeah, and I think consistency and content, right? So that when you do use that email address that people have entrusted to you, first, don't overuse it. Don't be spamming them, every other week or day with, information about your book. I put together my newsletter once a month, and it's very content heavy. It's fairly long, but I don't have many people unsubscribing from it. They're staying with me. And so I give, fun little updates about, what's going on with me in my writing or some things that I want to share from my personal life. And then I move on to what are my upcoming events, if somebody's in the area, or my Zoom events they want to catch. And then I have a dedicated section all about book clubs. So some book club tips, how to enhance your meetings, some suggested titles to read, what my book clubs are reading. For people are always looking for ideas of recommendations. Book club hostesses hate being the person who has to pick the book and it's a bomb. So, they're looking for ideas. And then I get into another section that has reviews of books that I have read, as well as I always have a giveaway every month where I take a book off my shelf and I pass it forward to someone else.
Yes, and you're here today on a podcast.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that will be in one of my newsletters for sure.
Yes, the more you can get yourself out there. I recently had someone scheduled for a podcast and they canceled because they felt overwhelmed.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So encouraging everyone listening, just to show up. It's a conversation. It's not scary at all. We're just talking. And the questions are coming from a place of what you already know. It's not
exactly.
like pop quiz in English class or something.
And we all love to talk about our books and our writing and share that. So it should feel very natural.
It will feel really natural. Now, of course, you need to listen to the podcast, listen to some other interviews by this person, so you get a feel for what they do. I've been on radio programs where the host won't let you talk. They ask a question, you halfway get through a sentence and they interrupt, and then they ask
Right.
another question halfway through the sentence, they interrupt.
I've been there too. That's why I much prefer podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. If you hear that, just pass. Just find somebody that's friendly and wants to actually hear what you have to say. So, any other marketing tips about marketing in general that would encourage people?
I think you kind of hit on it before a little bit, Lana, of, thinking outside the box, to get creative, try something different. You never know until you try it, and testing different things, because there is no one magic bullet in book marketing. That's for sure. So successes can come in very different places. Um, I personally love in-person events because you're meeting readers, face to face. Even if they're virtual, you're putting a name behind a reader, you're making that connection. And boy, when you find just a couple of people that become your champions, it's amazing. I have one woman that I met over a virtual event, and God bless her, she loved my books so much that she's recommended to her library. She's bought enough copies of my book to donate to her library so that they have enough for an entire book club, 10 copies. She's given it as gifts to people. So, that has just touched my heart that I've made such a connection with her, with the messages in my book. So I love the in-person or virtual. And and staying fresh, and again, just trying different things, because there are lots of different marketing avenues out there, from paid advertising to publicity to giveaways you can participate in, and then working with other authors. I mean, that's what I love about this Women's History Month program is working and connecting with those other authors and learning from them too.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. One feature that some people may not know about is if you want to support an author, you can go to the desk at the library and fill out a request form, and the library will order the book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's an amazing way to help an author, in addition to writing and leaving reviews that we all love as well. And they don't have to be long reviews. One sentence works for us. You don't have to write a book report. Who wants to do that? I still have nightmares, from sixth grade. Uh, but but asking your library to order the book, and then the follow-up is make sure you check it out after they get it. So even if you've read it, check it out so that they make sure that your recommendation is a solid one and gets it into circulation.
Yes, absolutely. That is such a good idea. And there's so many more, and they don't have to cost a lot. They
No.
may take some time, but yeah, there's so many things. So do you, since you're a historical writer, do you approach historical organizations or?
Oh, absolutely. I've spoken with historical societies. The one down in Philadelphia, of course, had a natural affiliation for my story. Um, Genealogy societies also are a great resource. And they love to, hear my success in doing my genealogy research and the tools I used. And then what I did with the information I learned about. And you don't have to write a book, but just that idea of what you can discover. And sometimes you don't want to discover some of the people in your history, in your family. You don't want to say that you were associated with somebody that might be of a more nefarious sort. But you never know what you might find, and I think it's fascinating. So yeah, historical societies, local, national, genealogy societies, they're great places to connect for the historical fiction author.
Yes, yes. It goes to a little broader scope for those who don't write historicals. Maybe you write something, could be fantasy. If you write fantasy, then think about Comic-Con or some of these other places where people dress up and they have these enactments and that kind of thing. If you write about Civil War, what about Civil War enactments?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And there's interest groups out there for just about everything and anything,
Yes.
Dog lovers of the world, golden retriever lovers of the world, it's they're out there and
Yeah.
they want to, hear about your stories.
There's an old joke that I heard a long time ago. It just came to my mind that there is a position for everything in the world. And he said, this man was telling his wife, he said, just call the grocery store and ask for the vice president of prunes. And so she did. And he said, so she called up and she said, can I speak to the vice president of prunes? And the man on the other end said, do you want prepackaged or loose?
Yes, they're out there. They're out there for sure.
They're totally out there. So you find out what your reader likes and what organizations they belong to and go there. I always tell people, don't hang out at the writers' book fairs where it's a whole, I'm going to one, I'm actually speaking at one at the end of this month, where there are 200 author tables at this big event. Mm-hmm. And that's not the place really to find readers because you're loaded with authors and the competition is staggering.
Yes. Yeah.
So go to the places where most authors wouldn't go, where they don't think of. Yeah. Because it's your niche.
Yeah, exactly. I actually do some marketing consulting as well and starting to work with a few authors and just had a woman that, she's written a lovely memoir and talks a lot in her memoir about, the therapy that she's found through art and drawing and painting. And so she was, looking for ideas of, where can I sell my book? She's self-published. So that's an even harder battle. But we brainstormed and, I said, well, local art galleries. They may take your book in, on commission, on consignment. And she loved that idea. And she goes, maybe I could, have a little flyer that has some of my artwork with it or something. I was like, perfect. So she's going to give that a try.
Yes, absolutely. One of my recent books is about a paranormal. It's a paranormal cozy mystery, and a local crystal shop took the book on consignment.
Perfect.
And it's fiction. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Great idea.
So, do you find that the marketing process is really challenging? I know that is something that a lot of people talk to me about. Complain. I shouldn't say complain, but
they do. Yeah. It can be a challenge. I have actually a professional career in sales and marketing, so I love it, but I know other folks absolutely despise it. And a lot of that comes from, just a comfort level of promoting themselves or promoting their books. And, it's either you have to get over that hump or not, because it's so competitive out there. If you do want to sell some books, you need to be constantly promoting, One of my brothers says I do too much of it on Facebook. I was like, well, I try to get a balance out there, but at the end of the day, I want more readers to read these stories and learn about these women doctors. So it's constant and consistent for sure. But that's why I also have started to work with a few folks as well to help those people that are completely naive and overwhelmed with the marketing process and everything that's out there, and the costs of it as well. The dirty little secret, too.
Yes, yes. Once you finish the book, the real work begins. And I know that's hard for people to hear, but if you don't put muscle and some money behind it, it's not going to go anywhere. It's really important to do that. So how would you recommend setting the book up for success before the writing process?
I think it is starting to build that community, that base of readers that are going to order as soon as you go on pre-order, they're hitting that buy now button. So it's developing that insider group, if you will, the street team, people that you can rely on that are going to be there to support you and lift you up each step of the way as well. So I think that is the very first place to start, and start when you start writing, and share with them, make them part of the process. Let them do, early reads, early critiques. Look to them for information and advice and feedback as you're developing the story, so they feel like they're really a part of the whole process.
Yes, the engagement and getting to know you as well. Yeah. I know someone who travels a lot to different book fairs and things like that, and she's always putting up little clips, reels of herself on Instagram. Where am I now? Where am I now? And it doesn't really have anything to do with her book topic, but yet people follow her. They're curious. Where is she now?
I employ that same device, although I change it up a little bit. My husband and I are snowbirds from New England, and I put up every post I put up that I have my dog traveling with us. The pictures of the dog get more likes and comments than things about my book. So I put up, where is Taylor now? And everyone wants to know, where is Taylor now? Is she comfortable? It's cold where you are. Do you have a coat for her?
She has a permanent one. Janis, this has been amazing. What's coming up next for you?
So we're going to get through Women's History Month, showcasing all 31 of those books. Very excited. And then it's head down into my writing desk, into my keyboard. My third book is coming out in March 2026. A departure. It's not going to be women in medicine. That was a 2-book series. So we're going to explore a whole different profession for women, as well as a different time period. I'll be looking at World War I in Berlin.
Ooh. Wow. I've
got deadlines already on that one, even though it won't be releasing till March 26th.
Yes, the wheels turn slow as far as getting it in, and then it takes a while for the publisher to be able to get it out. Yeah. Wow. Well, good for you. All this research. You must love research.
I do love research. And the woman in the third book is involved in, again, another industry that I have no connection to at all. So that's been fun to research and learn about that too.
Wow. Well, give us your website so that the audio, because most of the time the podcast is audio only, people in the audio can hear where to find you.
Sure. It's pretty simple. It's just Janis, and that's JANIS R Daly, DALY.com. So Janis R Daly.
Janis, this has been a great, fun conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lana. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
And thank you for being with us today. See you next time.
Thank you for tuning into the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where we share tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Remember to visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Fiction Writers Podcast.